Welcome back to day 35 of our chess journey to 1500 ELO on chess.com. We are on a roll right now, so let's see if we can keep up our winning streak or if it will break today. Let's jump on into our browser and start a game. So today we get Tim K54321 from the Netherlands. We will play 1d4 as per usual, and we will go for the Queen's Gambit. We get the Queen's Gambit declined, and we won't go for this. I think it's called the Rosalimo. You might correct me if I'm wrong. Where after this move, our opponent might play this, which I'm not quite sure as to how to respond to. So here I think we will go on ahead and play our knight up instead. They play a6, which I think is a move that might allow them to capture this pawn perhaps, because it prepares b5, I think, to defend this pawn after it captures. So here I think I want to have a quick look at least. With our knight here, we don't have this diagonal for our queen. We could obviously capture, but that's typically not the best move. Let's see if they capture. There could be an argument for pushing to e4, wherein our structure will be a bit more exposed, as we won't have a pawn chain. So let's look at this first. After this, we will have this move. And here, I don't think we get what we want there, so we might go ahead and play queen to c2 first to defend our pawn, and this is typically a good square for the queens in a queen's gambit type of position. It might be a bit suboptimal, I think, playing with our queen here, as if they take, we might have to move the queen a couple of times. But I think on the c4 square here, they could only really hit our queen with this move. After which I think we will probably fall back, I think. And then we just keep on playing normal moves. If they take, we do get the big center here, but they could always strike back against our center. If they play the knight up, we always have this pinning idea in the Queen's Gambit. Our opponent might also play their bishop up like this. And then if we block with our knight here, they could try to go for this again. And then if we hit their piece, they don't go for this. Okay. Then we capture, and I think we should be in an okay spot at least. I want to look at the best continuation here afterwards. The engine probably urges us to just be fearless and lose the pawn, but I'm not quite confident in our follow-up there. So I think we'll go on ahead and look at the defensive fallback move here, queen c2, as I'm not seeing any alternatives. If we had the option here, I would have wanted to go in here, but their knight is currently defending the square. This does, however, prevent our opponent from moving their knight up here. So let's just fall back and not use too much time. They move their bishop. And this is a bit of an annoying move, simply because they threaten capturing and destroying our structure. But we would like to play this move at some point, I think. There might be an argument for playing e4 here, but then it might be weak and it's already targeted. So currently what I'm looking at is this knight move to d2, defending our knight and allowing us to play other moves, but it will disallow this bishop from moving, for now at least. And this also allows us to defend our pawn if they capture, as currently, if we had defended this knight in another way, they could have taken this pawn after taking our knight. So here we had to look at their options. We could probably expect a knight move here or a bishop move along this diagonal. So let's have a quick look at their bishop moves. This square loses the bishop, and so does this. They could play some passive moves further back here. I'm expecting this move, or sorry, this move. This wouldn't be all that good for our opponent, I think, as it would cut their attack against our pawn. This knight move, I think we just develop normally. I would like to get this bishop up in that case, but I'm not seeing a good way of doing so. Simply because this knight is blocking it, and it still serves a purpose. So there might have been an argument here for playing a3 and moving our queen up to defend the pawn and the knight. But we won't play like that right now, I think. So we want to get to castling as quickly as possible here, I think, so we don't fall behind and get our king into trouble. We might be playing with this bishop here in an awkward position this game. Playing behind our queen. Or at least behind our pawn chain here, because now I'm looking at this move. So we could get to castling as quickly as possible. I wanted to play this, but it does leave this pawn a bit weak. And we want to play this move at some point either way to create this chain, as we don't have a c-pawn to defend our d-pawn with. I'm not seeing any tactical ideas here, so let's just play this up and not use too much time. There is always this move here, but this wouldn't be all that bad, as we would gain some space, I think. They could reposition the bishop onto the b6 square, but it is still defended by a pawn. It could, however, prepare a c7 to c5 push by our opponent. So we would have to be conscious of their idea at least. But they move this knight up. And now I want to have a quick look at the following position here. This knight doesn't have a lot of moves just yet, because we are killing their forward squares. But does it have an idea of jumping in like this? I don't think that's a threat right now, so we probably just want to move this bishop. I think we might also have an option of moving our pawns up here and developing our bishop along either diagonal on the queen side, but we probably don't want to go for that right now. We could play our bishop to d3 here instead of e2, simply because it's our knight here is defended by our other knight. So I think we might want to play to this more active square. Once again, I think we will be looking at this in the evaluation afterwards to get a proper idea of what the best move here is. But it does look quite decent to me, at least. We can't get kicked out by their knight. And this move does not quite work, as we have 3 pieces here. So So as we have been talking about, we can probably expect their bishop to move up, but now I think they have several options. They play c5 instead here, and now we want to calculate a bit, I think. First of all, we have to make certain we can castle if we want to go for that. If we castle, this would allow us to just take a capture with our knight, and I think we would be okay there. If we castle and they push, we would be losing some space. We can't go up here necessarily because we would lose our bishop here, and this would be an awkward position. So how about we look at the capture then? After this, our bishop will be hit, and I don't quite like that. But in this position, we could probably just move back for a while and play for b3. And this might be a bit overextended by our opponent. So I think we might go in ahead and play the castling first. They prepare to get this rook here, and now if they capture, our queen is going to be hit, which means we probably want to get out of the way here. So how would we decide to play this? Do we have a way of generating a threat with our queen? This loses to a fork. And if we go here, we still get hit with this discovery. We might have to play backwards here, which is quite awkward, losing some space, and go queen to d1. And then once they capture here, we will have to spend some moves, I think, to get our rooks into the game and connect them, because our bishop on c1 is looking quite grim. This does not work, so we have the options of either b1 or d1 for our queen here, or we might capture first and then move out of the way. But after we capture, they always have this. We can't recapture, and wherever they move, our queen will have a discovery attack against it. So I think we might have to play this awkward looking move. If they push, we still have to go back here, I think. So they are probably having a good time here on the queen side, because we are losing space. But we do want to hit back against their pawn chain here, and probably regain some ground at some point. I'm curious as to whether we should have taken their pawn in the c-file, but I'm not quite convinced we should have because of this knight move still. They aren't castled yet though, so if we do open up the position, we might be happy to get a trade here, but they could even recapture with the bishop here and prepare their own castling. So as I mentioned, I think our way of developing here will be through playing probably b3 and then getting our bishop up to this diagonal. Because this will probably open up as long as our opponent doesn't play c4 here. And if they do, I think this b3 move allows us to capture. And then they won't have this clamp on our position. at least not to the same degree as they do now. They develop their bishop, and I think we might have this b3 move here, which I think would take the sting out of this push. So then we probably just expect a castle in response, and then we finish our development pretty much, and then we can probably look to create some counterplay against their position here. Yeah, I'm not seeing any convincing alternatives. We want to get all our pieces into action as quickly as possible. So let's play up here. If they capture, we still capture with the knight to keep our pawns connected. And if they capture, we get this diagonal staring down towards their king in the long term. So then this weak bishop, as of now at least, is probably going to have good long-term prospects. I was a bit worried earlier on because it might have been a useless piece after we created this chain. We probably had an incorrect move order because being white we shouldn't have to develop in such a way that we kind of kill our own piece's potential. They castle, and here I think we just go bishop to b2. Let me just check quickly. I'm not seeing any tactics or any alternatives, I think. So we will go on ahead and play like this. And now our opponent should be ready for a fist fight as well, I think, for a complete brawl here. Everything will probably get traded down at some point. I have been looking at moves like this for a while, but we are still covering this square at least. And this doesn't do a whole lot. Their other knight can't really jump in, apart from this square, after which we cover their forwards moves. This is still defended by our knight, so which ideas does our opponent have? This doesn't quite seem to do a whole lot, as it won't be hitting our pieces. This is defended, and so is this pawn. So here I think we have a pretty simple idea of opening up this diagonal and trading rooks along the c-file. Our opponent seems to be trying to come up with a plan here. So which alternatives could they have? We have been looking at a lot of their potential moves, so I'm simply trying to look at additional threats. A move like this centralizes the queen, and it doesn't change what happens after this capture, I think. They jump in here with the knight. Do we have a good response? This move here probably seeks to claim this outpost. Let me have a quick look here. We could obviously capture, or we could just move our rook up first. Then if they jump in, they would fork this pawn and our bishop, which does lead me to the conclusion that we might want to play a3 first, just killing off this potential outpost entirely. So let's go on ahead and do that. And now the ball is back in our opponent's hand. They have to come up with a move. I am a bit curious here as to whether we should play bishop takes or knight takes if they do capture here. Let's look at the alternatives. This knight can capture, and if they hit us here, we could probably drop back. If they don't... The thing is, I want this backwards knight here to get a good position, and this move might open up a good square for that knight, but I'm not seeing any good follow-up. Simply because if this knight captures here, it doesn't have a good square to go back to apart from the square it came from. I looked briefly at this move, but I don't quite like it. It might be good though. There might even still be an argument for playing e4. It seems like our opponent is trying to just jump in with their knights here. So let's have a quick look at our options. We might have this move, just getting onto the file early on, prior to this capture, whichever way it does go. And still, I think none of their knights have any prospects. This, and we still capture. If they capture, we win. A pawn at least. So let's just go up like this. And now this pawn on a3 is still defended. So after this is removed, our bishop defends. I don't quite like our bishop on d3 here, or I didn't at least, while they had a knight that could recapture, but they moved both of their knights. So now if we capture here, we won't get hit by a knight at least, so this bishop won't get dislodged. I think at this point we are quite happy with our piece positioning, so we might try to break free from our opponent's aggression by starting this chain trade. It wouldn't quite be a chain trade though, as our opponent, or rather as we only have one piece targeting the square apart from our opponent, apart from this pawn rather, so whichever way they capture, we can't really keep on capturing. So do we have any other ways of hitting this square? We might play our knight up here, for example. But then we would be weak to any discoveries, as this knight might hit like this, for example, and if we recapture, they take our knight. But now, however, I am looking at this move. I'm not quite liking what I see though, as their queen is targeting this. But after this square, or this move rather, they have to move the queen. If they attack, or rather if they go onto this file, we can take, I think. And if they take, we take, and their queen can't recapture. And if we go up here and they don't go onto that file, we could still recapture and we would win, or rather capture and we would win a pawn, I think. It might be a pawn that's difficult to protect, but we might look at getting b4 in then, and then we might have a passed pawn. Like this. Just want to make sure this doesn't work, but it's a bit late to start calculating now. This. They don't go for it. And now I think we could go on ahead and grab this pawn. Probably like this though, because this gives me I'm a bit fearful our piece might get trapped. This would also hit this knight, after which it will have to move. It can't go forwards. So it will probably move back here, which should be about its only square, unless they go to a8, but then their knight will be dead. So we can expect this move, after which I think we'll go for the protected passed pawn. I still don't think our opponent has any moves like this. Let's have a quick look once again. I don't think this changes the position at all, because this knight is defended by our bishop, so they can't move here to capture our knight. So I'm not quite sure which move our opponent could be looking at here, as I'm not seeing any other potential tactics. They probably just have to move this knight. This doesn't work, this is occupied, but they capture. So here I'm quite curious as to what they have calculated. Does this work, or do they lose a piece? If we take here, what happens? This might be a bluff by our opponent, but they did spend a bit of time here, so we will do the same, I think. Here, this is not bad for us, I think. Or it might be. If we go in like this first, I think we should just win a clean piece. So let's go in like this, and then we can create this outpost. We also threaten taking this bishop, which should be quite good, as then we just force more material off the board. There might have been a threat here if we took with the rook here, as we calculated this line, but it might have been okay for us as well. I didn't want to go into that territory though, so instead we went for this, and I think we should be up a clean piece. At least I'm hopeful we will be. This knight here does not have any forwards moves. Their bishop could go here, but what does that accomplish? If we capture, why would we capture here though? Let's have a look. If we capture, their queen probably goes in. I think we just want to play solid first of all, because we are up a piece. This does invite their knight in though, but we have this move. This might have been a free pawn, but considering we are up a whole piece, I think I want to play without any risks here. We do have to be wary of our time situation though. They are looking for a discovery here. We can move our queen out and occupy the file as our opponent has done. Or we could move in here, hitting this bishop and trading off another piece. This hits the queen, but I'm not seeing a good follow-up after they move. So let's jump in here first. I'm a bit scared here, as if we make a mistake we could lose our advantage. But I don't think this should be all that bad. They could move all the way back, but then I think we have good access into their position. We could even play f4 here, cementing this knight in place, but then they could play f6, so we probably won't go for that idea at least. They could move this bishop back like this, but I think we still have the idea here of taking this pawn, and then we just go back once we get hit. This pawn is still defended by our bishop. So let's say we have this position. We probably just drop back, and their queen can't do a whole lot down this file. They hit our knight, and we just want to trade material here, I think. Their only move is this, and they are looking to double up the rooks potentially. But I think that's not a big threat. We have to make a decision here. Do we move our queen out of the way here? I think we might want to, because this might invite a bit too much pressure against our position. I am looking at this, but I think that's just a fake threat by us. Let's try to play a bit more solidly, although this might have been a good idea, moving our queen out to a more active square. I might simply be too afraid here of making any blunders, which in and of itself is probably not a bad idea considering we are up a whole piece, but there might be more critical moves here, winning a more positional advantage, or a larger advantage at least. So given the chance here, I think we'll try to trade down material along those files here, just forcing the rooks off the board, and then I think our opponent is going to have difficulties creating a lot of threats. I'm still looking at this move, and now it's looking a lot more appealing, I think, because we do hit the rook here, and it's not defended. So it might force the rook off the board. I think I like seeing this move. After this, they have to move the queen. This is a beautiful move, I think. It forks those pieces here, and if they take, we take the queen. I'm not seeing any refutation here to our move, so let's capture. I want to be a bit careful considering our time situation, as I haven't played all that good endgames yet, when we have had very little time at least. It's important to note here we have two pieces defending. This bishop is doing a lot of work. So our opponent resigns here. So that brings us up to 1423 ELO. Thanks a lot to Tim K54321 from the Netherlands for our game today. Let's jump on into our game review. Today we played with an accuracy of 87.8 and our opponent played with an accuracy of 78.4. We got into a massive skirmish here, so I'm curious as to whether we had some more interesting ideas, as there was probably a tactical minefield to be seen. This was theory. Apparently we should have played up here. How much of an advantage did we lose? 0.3, so this was a lot better. After this, what happens if they play this move? Then we just drop back, and we have induced a weakness. If they capture, then an immediate a4 is apparently the best move. Expecting this to happen, so they have to play this first, and then we can pick the pawn up a bit earlier. This was a bit difficult to see from a while away. This move to b3 though is a move I know is quite typical in the Queen's Gambit accepted. Well, this was apparently good. We played a bit more passively and captured like this, but even here we should have apparently played e4 first. They hit our queen, and we should have went back to d3, which I guess it does make sense, because I was looking at c3 earlier on, defending both of those pieces here. Did the engine like that move, or did it have any setbacks? I guess it's probably not that good, as it leaves our queen prone to any attacks here, for example, and it's still in the middle of the board. Well, we got into this position. This was apparently best here. If they take, then we have ex at this point. We went up like this. And now I wasn't quite happy with our position, because this knight move here did force us to lock this bishop up, I think. It did become a good piece though. The computer still screamed at us to play a4, which we did miss the critical idea. This was the best square for our queen. All of those squares here were off. They were basically not going to happen, I think. They didn't work out, and this just destroyed our position, I think. If we played queen to b1, it would have been too passive. The computer did want us to get our queen to e2, but we played up here. It seems like the evaluation is quite similar, so there is not much of a difference, it's just a different plan. They castled, and this was the best move, and this was not all that bad. Which move was best here? We should have apparently played rook to c1. Well, we didn't. We played up here first, and our opponent seems to have collapsed a bit at this point. I wouldn't quite say collapsed, but they did not do their position a lot of favors, jumping in randomly with the knights here, as they didn't have any prospects. This was a blunder, and we found the refutation. This knight capture was apparently best here, but this is essentially what won us the game. We just had to be accurate from this point onwards. This was apparently even better. But why is this so decisively winning? Let's say our opponent kicked our knight out. Then for some reason this move was crushing. If they take, this move even, I guess our bishops were kind of powerful along those diagonals, and it would have been difficult for our opponent to do a whole lot. This was also defended, or attacked rather, by our knight, and we just had complete access to their position. I did not see this idea, but we went for this instead, which was a more direct idea of trading down material. Here we did look at this, and I looked at this move or this move. I didn't actually consider the best engine recommendation, hitting this weak pawn and also hitting this pawn. We lost some evaluation, but we still had a massive advantage. And after this move, the game was essentially won. Apparently this move was even better. This might be a bit too abstract for me to understand though. When I played this move, the computer wanted us to play g3. Or did it? Yeah, there is a slight difference. But this is more direct. And here they would have lost material. If they took here, we would have taken this probably, which was not the best move. In this situation rather, we should have taken the rook. And after they moved here, we should have taken the other rook. Apparently this was better. I wanted to get their queen off, as then they wouldn't have any attacking prospects. So after this, their best move would have been captures on c7, going backwards. And I did not quite see this, because now we did trade 2 pieces for the queen, which is not... I mean, it was ideal in this position, but it's not the most critical way of playing this. Well, either way, we had a pretty nice win today, and our opponent resigned in this position. Once again, thanks a lot for the game, Tim K. And thanks a lot for all of you for watching to the end of the video. That's our game for today, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye bye.